a city councilman who wants to be comptroller, and a radio host who suddenly finds himself representing Staten Island in the council, at least for now. The Point starts right now. Brooklyn Councilman Justin Brannan chairs the Finance Committee. Now he wants to use those skills to be the city's chief money guy. So I have to ask you, you're, I think, the only candidate in the race that's talking about corruption, and you have an anti-corruption bill. I think you should tell me and the viewers about it.
Sure. Thanks, Marcia, for having me, as always. Yeah, I put out a plan to really beef up the comptroller's office, to start a public integrity unit, and also to publish a list of the 25 worst actors in the city, vendors. There's a lot of contractors, people that are getting city money that should not be getting city money.
Why not?
Because they're corrupt, because they're connected to friends and family of people in power, and that's not how we're supposed to do business.
How do you stop them from getting contracts if they're the low bidder?
Because sunlight is the best disinfectant for corruption, right? The public needs to know who the city is doing business with. The same way that Jumani, the public advocate, publishes the worst landlords, people need to know the city, your tax dollars are going to these vendors who are corrupt or in cahoots or friends and family of the administration or people in power. That's not how we should do work. I believe very much in giving more opportunity, especially to MWBEs. And right now you have corrupt vendors and contractors who are, let's take DocGo, for instance.
I was going to say, what about that?
Right, so DocGo, okay? I've got hundreds of nonprofits that do amazing life-saving work, right, that are waiting to get paid for work they did years ago. Meanwhile, DocGo is getting $450 million checks like we're handing out candy on Halloween. It's wrong. It's got to stop. And the public I think knowledge is power in these situations. The public needs to know who the city is doing business with. And I think if you saw that, people would be appalled.
So as comptroller, can't you decide to not certify those contracts?
Of course.
Don't you have that power?
Yes, you have it. You're right, absolutely. You have the power not to certify. But I think there's two things here, because we're sort of in there's a lot of false choices with this administration. We need robust oversight on our contracting, our vendors. You can't just pump this stuff out. But you can have both. You can get nonprofits and vendors paid on time for work they already did, but you also need to have robust oversight. And right now it seems like the robust oversight is only reserved for the nonprofits that are doing great work, and the checks, we're just writing blank checks to companies like DocGo, and it's wrong, and I think New Yorkers are fed up.
I think the comptroller could do something about that.
Agreed.
So let me ask you this, since we're talking about corruption and other things. The mayor of the city of New York on Friday went to Washington yet again to meet with President Trump to push for priorities for New York City and to ask for money, I guess, to stop the budget cuts that are expected from Washington. How do you feel about the mayor yet again cozying up to President Trump? Is it a good idea because a good relationship with the president can help? Or does it bother you at all?
I think if the president was sane, you'd like to work with him. But I think it's clear that he wants to destroy New York City. He hates everything that we stand for. And Elon Musk, who's an unelected oligarch, is coming after our seniors, coming after Medicaid and Medicare and our veterans benefit, the 9/11 health fund. Look, I don't know if the mayor has some inside knowledge because he's in cahoots with the Trump administration that Trump is not going to try to claw back even more money. But we've already seen in the past couple of months, Trump and his guys are trying to claw back hundreds of millions of dollars from our budget. And frankly, this administration, it takes weeks to even sue to get that money back. So I would love for the mayor to come back from Washington with a giant bag of money for the city of New York. That would be great. But everything we're seeing so far is that even if the mayor is compromised or colluding with the federal government, with the Trump administration, we're not getting anything out of it because we're still getting cut. So it doesn't make sense. Why is the mayor so afraid to attack the president and stand up for the city of New York where he's not even getting anything from it?
But maybe he thinks it's good policy and good politics to try to get the president on New York's side and try to ameliorate some of the expected cuts.
In a normal world with a normal person, I would agree. But what I'm saying is I think we're already seeing that the toothpaste is out of the tube. Trump is coming for us, right? He's coming for our money. And Eric Adams playing nice with Trump, this is where it's got us. It's got us nowhere. So I don't think this is a situation where you can play nice with this guy. This guy's a bully, and you got to fight fire with fire. You have to have that killer instinct to fight back.
So one of the third rails of New York City, and is certainly for the comptroller, is the idea of the inequity in property taxes.
Oh, my God.
And I wonder, is there anything that the controller can do? Obviously, the mayor has to take a role in this as well. But is there anything the controller can do to try to change the property tax system so that it's more fair?
Sure. This is a great issue. I mean, I've been yelling about property tax reform since I became an elected official. I'm from southern Brooklyn. We pay some of the highest property taxes in the city. You know, I have neighbors who pay more than people on the Upper West Side or in Brownstone, Brooklyn pay. And I think it's inequity hidden in plain sight. Everyone agrees that our property tax system is busted and broken and dysfunctional. The controller has a massive bully pulpit to go up to Albany to get our colleagues buy-in. I mean, the state legislature is also bought in. The city council is bought in.
Can't the city change the property tax system itself?
It depends on who you ask. There are things that we could do, but the problem is that the whole system is so rusted and the inequity is so calcified that just tweaking and nibbling around the edges is not what we need. We need wholesale reform, and I'm confident that we can get there. If we have a mayor who actually can build relationships in Albany and can make sure property tax reform is on that to-do list, we could actually get it done. The city council is ready. I would be ready as controller to get that done, to build that broad coalition from folks from Park Slope to Staten Island who are like, look, there's some of us have been paying too much for too long. Some of us have been getting a break for too long. And those of us who have been paying too much are subsidizing those who are paying too little.
But see, when Bill de Blasio became mayor, and he was mayor for 8 years, one of the first things he said when he was elected was property tax reform.
Yeah.
Was he able to do it? Did he even appoint a commission? Answer, no.
No. Well, what de Blasio did was that, like, right when he was almost done leaving office that December, he put out the blueprint, which is at least we have.
He said he was going to do it on day
Agreed.
one.
This is the thing. I think what happens is you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose, right? So
sounds like Mario Cuomo.
So as soon as you get in there, suddenly you realize, oh my God, I need these other 95 things from Albany. So property tax reform gets thrown off the sheet. It's got to stay on that list. It's got to be a top priority. When I'm controller, it's going to be one of my top priorities.
So when you look at Brad Lander and the work he's done as controller, what has he done well and what has he done not so well?
So I think Brad has done a good job with demystifying the role of the controller, right? No one knows what the controller does. I think over the next 4 years, with the constant threat from Washington and federal cuts, people are going to have to learn very quickly what their local treasurers and controllers do. I think Brad has done a good job with demystifying the office, bringing people in, right? He does audits. He'll bring in NYCHA residents to talk about what these audits found and real life experience. That's great, because you want to, it's a very wonky position. You want to universalize it a bit, because look, this ultimately comes down to tax dollars, right? It comes down to how is the city spending your hard-earned tax dollars. You know, I would say, look, one of the things I think is interesting is that as soon as controllers inevitably, as soon as they get elected, they immediately start thinking about running for mayor. I'm not running for mayor. If I wanted to run for mayor, I'd be running for mayor right now, right? I think you and I are the only people not currently running for mayor. So I want to be the controller. I want to do a good job at it. And I think over the next 4 years, it's going to be a very, very important role.
One of the things the controller does control are the pension funds.
Sure.
And sometimes controllers use it to have political positions. I wonder if you think that's a good thing. There have been some calls, for example, that the pension funds should divest from Tesla, for example. There are times when there's been calls to divest from companies that do business with Israel. How do you see the controller using that position as head of the pension fund?
Sure. I mean, your number one responsibility as controller is to serve as fiduciary and custodian of the city's 5 pension funds, right? 5 very distinct pension funds. They all have different risk appetites, different ideologies. It's almost a $300 billion pension system. I do not believe in playing politics with people's money. Your number one goal has to be at least achieving that mandated 7% return for retirees to have a dignified and stable retirement. But you have to make sure that your investments are aligned with your values. I've called to divest from Tesla because I think Elon Musk is a maniac, and I think the stock is a bad stock. We own almost over $1 billion in Tesla.
You own $1 billion worth of Tesla?
The city of New York has $1 billion in Tesla. This guy spends his days trying to kill us, and we're investing in his company. It's insane. We got to get the hell out of Tesla. So our investments have to align with our values, but I'm not here to play politics. I'm here to say, look, the stock is a dog. Elon's insane. We've got to get out of it because this is my mom's pension fund. I got to get out of this thing.
You think it sends a bad message?
Absolutely. We need to be investing in people who believe in the city of New York.
We'll have to leave it right there for now, but we'll be right back. As a radio host, Frank Morano talks for a living, a skill that should stand him in good stead in the city council, where he was just elected to fill the unexpired term of Joe Borelli. So why would you want to be in the city council?
Well, you asked such a good question, Marcia, in that first of all, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of yours, and it's a real treat to be here and to talk to your audience. Being on the radio is a lot of fun. And it's not exactly heavy lifting. I mean, it's hard work, but if I do something wrong, the consequences aren't exactly catastrophic.
But you do something wrong in the city council, everybody knows about it.
Exactly. But that's kind of the reason why I wanted to do this. You know, my wife and I have a little boy, a 3-year-old named Carmine, and I saw so many of my friends and my family members all moving off of Staten Island and out of New York City, and I wanted to be able to tell him when he was an adult that I did everything that I could to keep him here in New York and on Staten Island.
So how are you going to do that?
Well, a couple of things. One, we have a middle-class affordability crisis. Every day I'm meeting people that grew up on Staten Island, grew up in New York, and have raised their kids here and are forced to sell their homes because they can't afford the rising property tax assessments.
How can you change that? I mean, you're a Republican.
Yeah.
There's 6 Republicans in a huge city council. It's a minority party.
Well, the thing that I've learned is that Democrats don't really like being priced out of their hometown either. The other thing is there are more Republicans now on the city council than there have been in about 30 years. So this is going to be
still 6.
And 2 other Democrats that are part of this common sense caucus. So if that block of 8 votes together, we're going to be one of the most powerful blocks in the forthcoming speaker's race. So we actually have the ability to control the speaker's race and make it so that a moderate is elected rather than someone that wants to defund the police and turn New York into New Havana.
Yeah, but the thing about it is this. Before you can get to the speaker's race, which would be after November, you have to win a primary in June and the general election in November. What's with that?
Well, look, I'm not taking anything lightly, and that's one of the reasons that I'm working hard. In 40-some-odd days, we've got a primary election, and I'm out there every day trying to convince people to vote for me. But in terms of the issue of affordability and what can someone do as a minority in the city council, there's a great deal. You can fund a lot of great nonprofit groups and programs to support things like autistic children and different schools, and there's a lot that you can do in terms of capital projects and infrastructure, and that's some of what I think I can do largely on my own, even without any cooperation.
I'm interested in your take on Mayor Adams and his relationship with President Trump. I know that you're a Republican. I wonder how you feel about him courting the president. On Friday, he went to Washington to meet with the president to discuss priorities for New York City, I guess to try to get some aid from the federal government, as it's been slashing all kinds of programs. Good idea, bad idea? How do you come down on that?
I think it's certainly a good idea. I think whoever the mayor is should have a good relationship with whoever the president is, quite frankly. That's where I think some of the Democrats running are really kind of shooting themselves in the foot by running against Trump, because they're going to have to work with Trump if any of them are elected. In the case of Mayor Adams, so much of it looks contrived. It looks like, you know, he got these charges dropped, and now he's willing to do whatever the president asked. That being said, I think it's a great thing for whoever the mayor is to talk with whoever the president is and have a great working relationship. And quite frankly, I want to have a good relationship with whoever the mayor is. I hope it's Curtis Leawood, but whether it's Eric Adams, Andrew Cuomo, or anybody else, I'm going to have a good relationship with that person.
So you talked about having a block of people who could vote for the new speaker, but there's also going to be a race for minority leader, and that could be sort of an ugly Donnybrook, because there was a fight. Joanne Ariola ended up having it overturned and having David Carr kicked out. But now David Carr, who's an assemblyman, backed your candidacy. So are you going to have a problem deciding who to back for a minority leader?
No, I'm 100% behind Councilmember Carr for minority leader whenever there's a vote on minority leader.
That could be a deciding vote.
Well, yeah, it could be. But that's not going to really be an issue until January. For now, the current minority leader, Joanne Ariola, has been incredibly warm, incredibly gracious. She's been incredibly helpful, as have the other Republicans on the conference. So my view is we should all work together. We have a lot more in common than we do with the Progressive Caucus, for instance. So we'll deal with that come January. We'll see how things shake out.
So you said affordability is certainly a priority. What are the other priorities?
One is public safety. And I know crime is a lot better now than it was back in 1990 and 1991. But you get the perception that folks don't feel safe. They don't feel safe riding the subway. They don't feel safe when home invasions are rising in certain neighborhoods. So I think there's a morale crisis in the part of the NYPD.
How do you solve that?
Well, part of it happens to be not passing a lot of these crazy anti-cop policies that the city council has passed, like the neck compression bill, like
how
many stops act. You can go down the list. There's a long list that's passed with a veto-proof majority. The police need to know that I have their back and that New York has their back, and I think we need to elect more members like me, quite frankly, that are going to be supportive of the cops.
But what chance do you have? I know that you have the Common Sense Caucus, which has 8 votes, but how much of a choice do you really have, a chance do you really have to pick somebody who's not a progressive?
I think a pretty substantial chance, actually. You have a lot of different candidates that are talking about running, and you have a lot of council members that don't want to see business continue to leave New York. You don't want to see things like rising crime. So I think as long as we stick together and vote as a bloc, we're going to have ample opportunity to elect a sane speaker. But your broader point...
Sane speaker? Are you saying that the current speaker is insane? I
think a lot of the policies that she has okayed and pushed through the city council border on insanity. Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. I mean, the How Many Stops Act, passing that with a veto-proof majority, I think it was crazy. Even previous speakers putting through things like non-citizen voting. Fortunately, that was overturned by the courts. That's insane. It's a clear, blatant violation of state law. And for anybody to think that that's where the policies of the council should be, it's nuts. So I want to have a good, respectful working relationship with the speaker, but that doesn't mean a lot of the legislation that she comes out with or okays is something that my constituents are okay with. I'm there, in part, to be a bulwark against that. And if it passes 50-1 or 45-6, I'm going to try to make the case to the people of New York on shows like yours as to why this is insane legislation.
So one of the big things you're going to have to deal with is the idea of closing Rikers. Now, it's supposed to close in 2027, but clearly the local prisons haven't been built and the population has expanded exponentially. So you're going to have to make a decision to vote to not close Rikers or maybe never close Rikers. Where do you come down on that?
I do not think Rikers should be closed. Look, if we could wave a magic wand and have the inmate population be 1,500 or 2,000, then that would be a great thing. We're not going to be able to do that. So why not fix the problems at Rikers rather than multiply the problems by 4? I don't know why we think that whatever the problems are at Rikers, that's somehow going to be magically fixed if we put borough-based jails in 4 out of the 5 boroughs. So count me as a steadfast opponent of not only keeping Rikers open, but as the mayor would like to do, keep ICE at Rikers.
But you also have a situation where there's some land on Rikers Island. Why don't you just build a new prison that's state-of-the-art right on Rikers?
Well, there are multiple jails at Rikers, and many of them are in states of disrepair. I'm all for new construction, new renovation of the situation, at Rikers, because I could tell you, Democrat, Republican, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Bronx, I don't know a lot of people that want a borough-based jail in their neighborhood.
And yet, there's 4 that are going up right now. We have about 30 seconds left. So what would you do to stop it? Would you turn it into housing?
I am up for looking at all the options, but I think it begins with ending this farce that we're going to close Rikers Island. The inmate population is too large. It's not going to work.
We're going to have to leave it right there for now, but our conversations continue right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. Thank you for joining me. Americans are having fewer children, but if President Trump has his way, there could be another baby boom. How do New Yorkers feel about that? Well, they're weighing in on Your Point. Do you think a $5,000 bonus will have convince people to have more children?
No.
No.
Oh, hell no.
That's weird.
If they're thinking clearly, it won't.
No, I don't think that's too little.
$5,000 is not enough for a child, period.
So it's not going to help?
No, help what? 5,000, how much for the hospital?
We need so many more things than just $5,000, which would pay maybe for half a session at a daycare center.
Why do you think we're having fewer children?
It costs too much, for one thing.
Because we are concerned about the future of this world.
I think it's like the cost of living nowadays. It's just hard to survive.
Perhaps it's a great deal of responsibility to take on.
They're expensive. My parents had 8, and they managed to get us all through college, but it was a struggle.
Financially, people are not as robust as before, so I think there's concern.
They should help with student loans first if they want to help people, because that's holding people up the most.
So if you were going to give the president some advice about how to convince people to have more children, what would you say?
Make it easy, make things more affordable for people starting families.
A president can't convince a woman to have more children. The woman can only convince herself and her husband if they want children.
My advice to President Trump would be to go someplace else.
No, just leave the people alone. Don't interfere in their life, you know?
I think maybe treat people a little bit nicer. That seems to be an issue that I'm hearing with a lot of people, but
definitely address the student loan crisis. Just don't write it off as people not wanting to pay.
Give good child care.
Lower prices, more economic stability, more jobs for better jobs.
Do you think the White House will be able to convince people?
Possibly a small population of America, yeah, I do think so.
I would doubt it.
I don't think so at all. But.
Probably not.
The White House is not on our side. The White House is against, they're giving money to rich people.
Do you think that the White House will be successful in its campaign to convince people to have more children?
I'm not sure about that.
How come?
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I feel like younger people now, the generation now, just needs way more than that.